to the Stellar Woman Show, the Stellar Woman magazine, the magazine that brings you thriving women's stories, knowledge, and experiences so that you too can learn one or two things, be inspired, make a change, and thrive in your life. We're here to move light using knowledge so that you can tap into one woman's light, light up your life, and become the person that you are called to be. So we believe that knowledge is power, of course, if acted upon. And today we are thrilled. I am thrilled to be hosting here an amazing stellar woman. And this is Beth Lapides. Is it Lapides? Am I pronouncing it right?
It sounds perfect the way you say it. I love it. It sounds very magical. I say
Lapides.
I say Lapides. My family says
Lapides.
Lapides.
Welcome, Beth. My name is Stella Kikoya, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Stellar Woman magazine. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Beth is many things. I don't even know how she does what she does, but we are all going to learn and find out. She's an author, a TV host and producer. She is a comedian. She's actually also a creativity coach. And we're going to find out all those things, how she does them and how she manages to be the woman that she is today. You look so amazing. You look beautiful. We need to know how you're able to look the way you look and do all these things that you do. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Stella. Thanks for having me, and what a beautiful platform and mission you have.
Oh, thank you. So let's start off with first telling us more, because even if we know that you are the author of So You Need to Decide, you are a host and a producer of an cabaret. We need to know more about those things, but also all the other things that make Beth. Okay, so tell us, who is Beth Lapides?
Well, I think we're going to have a little bit of time to get into all of it, but essentially when you ask that big question, besides my job, I do identify with my name. So when you say, who is Beth Lapides, I've thought a lot about my name. I'm a writer, so of course words, and when you look at the phrase "be the change," the first word in "be the change," you can see Beth right there at the beginning of it. And I really identify with that changeability as a being who changes. And so I'm a be the change thing. And my name, Beth Lapides, Beth in Hebrew means house, and Lapides is stone. So I have this feeling of being very much a home, and a solid home that things sort of come through and like that. I'm an artist at heart.
Everything, an artist, definitely an artist we want to learn from. So thank you for telling us more of what you feel you are, coming from the names, just even bring it out from the names, that your names themselves. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you very much. And I want you to tell us about your backstory.
Well, my backstory, it's very interesting because backstory is so huge, and how much, I have probably 20 million hours of backstory. I'm a writer. But to just in a nutshell, I would say I grew up feeling different and not fitting in and sensitive. I'm also a high achiever, so I sort of think of myself as a type A free spirit, working hard to let the wind blow me where it will. Those two things are always in balance. I was a sick kid, which really shaped me. I think children who are in the hospitals, there's a transformation that happens there, a kind of way of looking at life that has definitely served me well through my life. A survivor, an understanding about the fragility of life from very early on. And but I was definitely muscling through at the same time. Super high achiever. I went to Brown. I went to Brown and then majored in modes of expression, art, dance, and writing. So I think that's a very encapsulated version of like my backstory, that the part of my backstory that is relevant to this.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I think when you talk about just being a sickly child and um, merging it and relating it to how we relate with life, and the fact that you take life maybe more seriously, more precious, and you then take it for granted, like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And you sort of start to understand the mystery of life from the beginning, and you see, it's also in 2022 language, it's definitely traumatizing and definitely gives you an awareness, highly sensitizing. Or, I've always had the question because I've talked to so many creative people who were sick kids in hospital and stuff. And I've always wondered, is it the sensitivity that makes you sick,
Oh,
or once you get sick, do you become sensitive? I don't know which, it's a chicken and egg thing. But I definitely, I had an autoimmune disease when I was 5, and I always made the joke, it was so claustrophobic in my house. I had to get sick to get out. And and then I was once reading the Louise Hay book, which, has this emotional background to all illnesses. And I looked up my disease and it said like claustrophobia. So I was like, oh my God. So in some ways I feel like I had a sense of adventure, and I really was like, even at 5, I gotta get out of here. Like, what's out there? And what was that way? And it was also really a huge lesson in um, not being a victim in a certain way, because what I had is a thing that they can take out your spleen to fix it. And my doctor didn't. And my body did heal itself. And this sense of waiting and then healing and then being able to really, they tested me all the time. It was just constant blood tests, and they would always say it's not going to hurt. I mean, I was constantly being told things that did hurt weren't going to hurt, and they did hurt. And I had already been taught, very moralistic, Jewish upbringing, truth was so important, tell the truth. But then I really did get the idea, like, tell the truth unless it's about pain. Pain is the one thing that it's okay to lie about. And because they kept saying it's not going to hurt, and they were authorities and doctors, and it did hurt. So I was like, oh, okay, well, if it's going to hurt, that's the thing you can lie about. Is So it took me a long time. I mean,
yeah.
it was a few decades of, being a grown up, until I got like, oh, this is what has happened to me. And especially because I'm a writer and a creative person, I had put up this block around certain painful truths that I had to have then the courage to look at, that it wasn't okay to lie. So, it's a constant state of evolving and growing, but I'm very grateful for that time. I mean, I wasn't socialized at school, which I think also can be super detrimental. School can be so fishy. There's a lot that's wrong with our educational system. And I was socialized in a place that was about healing. And so that was very, in a way, life affirming to have met people in and around the healing journey. That was also the first press I got. I was big, there's big p picture of me in the Providence paper surrounded by student nurses, and I'm looking at my Etch-a-Sketch, and it was like koi patient, all the girl anyway. But in some ways I think that Etch-a-Sketch also imprinted on me, because on Cabaret, the show I do, so much of it is about being in the now and doing new stuff all the time, which is very antithetical to the way comedy is mostly done. And I feel like maybe I've recreated the Etch-a-Sketch experience. The thing of doing it and being in the now and erasing it immediately. Anyway, so much happened to me in the hospital, and even more that we'll get into maybe. But I think it's so important to remember to, to not frame as a victim. I mean, to be a sick kid is sort of a victim-y story, and to me, it was like the most. I'm so grateful for that experience. Anyway,
Yeah. Oh, thank you, thank you. I think I had that part in the audiobook of the sketch of your image, and then the nurses surrounding you. So it's amazing that you brought it out. And I think so when you look at yourself as a sick child, because I think I also had a period in my life when I was a bit sickly,
Hmm.
and then you sort of idolize being the victim, like then people paying attention to you, then sometimes you start to build onto that to create
Yeah,
your
I
own
didn't have that. I really
identity.
like avoid doctors. I'm the opposite. I don't want to go. I don't like it. I mean, I think
That's
I always, I mean, I think I had the thing of being an artist and wanting to, the little monkey
go
thing that we have as
and do your
performers, like
thing.
dancing, I have this definitely. And I definitely want attention, but I'm not somebody who's like making appointments at doctors to get that attention for sure. I will avoid a doctor's appointment, I don't want to go there. I really
Yeah,
avoid, I'll like, yeah, stay healthy.
yeah. You want to stay healthy. It's important to stay healthy, yeah. But a lot of children are known to actually play on that bit of psychology, and yeah, just continue to be victim. Thank you for that. And I think it will tell us more about everything about your creative endeavor. So, what was your dream career as a child? Did you always want to be what you are today? What you do
In a way,
today?
yes. I mean, didn't really even know what it meant, but I just was like, I'm gonna grow up and be an artist. I mean, I didn't know what that career meant, but I did sort of understand the life path from the beginning.
Wow.
I think I thought it meant more being a painter than it, has meant in my life. Um, but certainly being I think of myself maybe more now as a creator than an artist. That might be just 2022 language, uh, but for sure, that's what I wanted to be, and it's taken a lot of different it's manifested in a lot of ways, and my career has been very organic in the way it's evolved from being a visual artist to being a storyteller to being, a performance artist and a comedian. And, it's grown organically from that. But, in my heart, I do identify with that word. And poet. I mean, I identify with the word poet really strongly.
Okay, so you are everything. You've also been a
I'm not
visual.
everything.
Wow,
I'm not
that's
everything.
amazing. Wow, wow, wow.
I'm
That's
not a
so good
sculptor.
because
There are definitely things I'm not. I
no,
am
no,
a
no. I
lot.
mean, as a visual, and then you are also a creator in other ways. So you've been a creator in all these different
Yes.
dimensions.
Yes.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
very good. That's very good and amazing, amazing. So allowing yourself to actually explore all those avenues of life. I mean,
Is it allowing my, yes. Is it allowing
yeah,
myself? I mean, it's more just, yeah, okay, I'll say it. Sure, I'll go with that. Allowing myself to explore. I think it's more being maybe stubborn. I don't really think of it as allow. I don't really, there's not like a permission
very.
matrix that I live with. Um,
Mm.
I do definitely have a burning desire that I honor. I would say more than something that I allow. I have definitely listened to that part of me that is, I don't want to say desperate, but yearning to be heard and yearning to create and yearning to connect.
And bring out to whatever is inside you. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's very good. So, thank you for that. And now we know that this is a platform for women's empowerment. And we know that as you are already a creativity coach, so we know that you're aspiring to be more. What are your attributes of your ideal stellar woman?
Well, I would have to say courage. I'm glad you're doing courage. I think courage is one of the most key attributes. And I always remind myself and people I work with, courage means the word is from a French word and core, which is heart, and it really means acting from your heart. And generally means despite your fear, because we're all afraid, and where we're, love and fear, it's all very interconnected. So I would say courage. I would also say patience, which I've had a very hard time developing myself. I think is a key that we don't always get gifted. We have to grow. Kindness is something that I think is a huge attribute. Have found kindness to be something I've also had to nurture and nourish, because I think um, the drive to succeed and be a woman, there's sometimes, over proving yourself and having to be aggressive, and it can diminish your kindness. And kindness is something that, especially the less you have it towards the outside world, as, we as women are trying to accomplish it, once it gets in short supply, we also are not able to be kind to ourselves, and that lack of kindness to ourselves is something can be very limiting. Kindness can open really a lot of doors. Changeability, I think, is key. I think consciousness is something we don't talk about enough in sort of a business way. It's sort of put off into sort of a soul growing way. And I think consciousness is so important. I would say imagination. I'm very resourceful, and I've had to sort of, even as an artist, I would say my resourcefulness is stronger than my imaginative powers. And I
Wow.
think imagination is so important. And finally, I would just say willingness. Sometimes resistance is so strong, and no-ness. So I would say willingness and yesness, and specifically the willingness to change.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much for that. Those are really strong attributes for our subscribers to aim for. I love them. Thank you very much. So, what future do you envision for women?
You know, um, the funniest thing is, you read the future is female, you see that sort of meme, and then I always think, yeah, now that there is no future, sure. It's like, sure, we've reached the end of history, and now what? And now it's our turn. But I mean, that is one side of me. The other part of me, I would say, we're entering a time when if we're going to, I am a hopeful person, and I do think that a future is possible. And I think that involves an embrace of the divine feminine, which is to say, everything that's yin, a world that honors receiving as much as making, um, you know, uh, in the Chinese yin yang, how the both sides of it. And I think the divine feminine and a certain type of creativity are the things that are going to get us through to a future. So I would say the future I imagine for women and envision for women is a future certainly of equality and freedom. I mean, this is what we're fighting for, and this is the big fight. And unless women can be free, um, the divine feminine cannot prevail. And without the divine feminine, I fear we come to an end of this earthly experiment.
Thank you. That's amazing. That's very good, very empowering, and it creates a lot of hope for women. So the next question is, the theme for this particular issue is courageous decision making. How important is decision making to you?
In some ways, it is the most important thing. When there are 8 habits of being a highly creative person that I've kind of I teach as a unit, and those habits are deciding, starting, facing the fear, changing, believing in yourself, consistency, listening and receiving and knowing yourself. But and deciding is the first. Without deciding, none of the rest of that can happen. And I don't know that we're even taught deciding, or I don't know that it's presented as the most important thing. But the word decide, and in some ways the word decide is part of the reason. Decide is related to words like homicide and suicide. All the side words have to do with a cutting off. So deciding is a cutting off of other options, and there's a certain violence to it. And I think that that wildness and that violence is something that keeps it, from being ever easy. So I would say, how important is it? It is so important. It's the most important.
So important and the most important. So thank you, and for giving us that a bit of history or word meaning behind the word decide. Thank you. So your audiobook, So You Need to Decide, was named 2020's best comedy book by the Vulture, and congratulations for that.
Thank you. One of the best. It was in the there was a list, and I was on it, and it was
you're one of them.
company to be in. Thank you. Yes.
What inspired you to decide, we chose to use that word, to decide to write this book?
Partly following the green lights, which is a great piece of advice for young women entrepreneurs and creators. Follow the green lights. It was advice that was given to me, and I try to follow it. My agent said to me, I think I could sell an original audiobook. Do you have any ideas? What could you do? A book that would be your story mixed with conversations. Do you have any ideas for what that would be? And over the course of producing and curating comedians and storytellers, I can suss out sort of like, this is the kind of thing that people have big stories about. And so I was looking for an idea, and it was around the last presidential election, 2018, and the word decide and the decisions, it's a big word around, and I was seeing it everywhere, and the word just kind of really started resonating for me, and I started seeing it in neon, and this way of making decisions of things start to be in your field a lot. You hear the same word over the same song, you start feeling a certain way, you're drifting towards something. So this idea of deciding really was started to come towards me. I was excited about doing an original audiobook because I love being an innovator. I mean, innovation is so exciting to me, and it's still a new area. So I was super excited about the idea of doing that kind of project and innovating in that area. And I knew that I could do a really good thing that was different than had been done. And so that was so once I thought of the idea of decision, I thought, oh, this is going to be good, because I'm going to get to tell a lot of stories, and I'm going to learn from it. The word creativity, people think it means to make something, but actually the word create comes from a word that means to grow. And so I'm always looking for projects that can help me grow. And I think this is a great metric for your listeners to use. It's helped me so much.
Creativity, that's good. So it means it's originally has the meaning of grow within it.
Yes.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. So in So You Need to Decide, still in the book, you share that the first big decision you ever had to make was when you were 5 years old. Can you elaborate on this decision?
I think what you're talking about, I'm like, I've written a lot, and it's hard to remember what's where. I think you're talking about there was a time in the hospital when I was sitting in the hallway and looking into a room where the kids were playing doctor. And I just thought, I mean, why are we playing doctor in the hospital? We could play anything. We could play house. We could play, astronaut. We could play school. Why are we playing doctor? I mean, as an adult, I understand that it's role playing and working out of stuff, but I was just like, don't we want to get out of here? Which is sort of very me. I am sort of like, if it's uncomfortable, let's get out. But but I didn't say anything. And it wasn't until many years later that when I was itchy to do comedy differently and was thinking, oh, can't we do this differently? Why does it have to be like this? That I remembered being in the hospital and being 5 and saying, oh, can't we play a different game, and not doing anything about it. So, you get a chance, life keeps giving you the same thing over and over again until you get it. So.
That's the truth. Oh, thank you. And that was a decision. So in the book, you interview a number of people about decision making. You interview people like Bob Odenkirk, Sandra Bernhard, and Margaret Cho, and many others, actually. This means you have so many lessons that you must have got from all those conversations. Are you able to share with the Stellar Woman subscribers with us the key lessons that you picked up from these conversations?
Well, I would say one of the key lessons is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every single one of these people talks about good decisions and bad decisions, and part of it is just being so many listeners have reached out and said, it was amazing how vulnerable your conversations were with people, that, people were willing to share a lot that made them vulnerable. And that vulnerability came in not just saying this great decision, that great decision, all my brilliant decisions. Everybody did make courageous decisions. Everybody but I would say risk taking and persistence, and not being afraid to make mistakes.
Not be okay. Yeah, those are a couple of lessons there. Yeah, good. Not being afraid to make mistakes. I think that's where many of us stay a long time to prefer not to make any decision
Yeah.
in one way or that's really a
Sometimes you just
problem.
have to pick a thing. It's like, yeah, it might be the wrong thing, and either you can change your mind or, period, the end, you failed this time. But for sure, the wrong decision is no decision.
That's a very important one for procrastinators. No decision. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. What would you consider as your most courageous decision that you've ever made? If at all, we have to bring you to that.
Um, there's something I think of as a cluster of decisions. Sometimes decisions aren't singular. And I made a decision to start my life over in a certain sense about a dozen years ago. And that was really hard. And it was really brave. And it was a cluster of decisions that involved divorce, leaving a house, and, selling it at a time when the real estate market was not really the right time to do it, and sobriety. So it was an enormous restart, and all at once. And yeah, it was pretty brave, I gotta say.
It was pretty brave. Yeah, it was like too
Brave
many
all at
things.
once, yeah.
Yes, yes. And do you regret any of that?
No, not at all. It was I'm so grateful for even when I look back, I almost think of that person as, how did she do that, that girl? I mean, I'm like, she, oh my God. And I don't regret it. And I'm almost not even the same person, and I'm super grateful to that girl who did that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What a brave girl she was. Yes,
What a
yes,
brave girl she was.
exactly. And she made it possible to be the person that you are and to serve the way you serve. Thank you. Thank you. But when you go through those decisions, especially at that moment when you had that cluster of decisions to make, if you look at it, I know that you don't regret any, but I want you to go back in time and think about what would you, what is the one thing that you would um, give yourself as, can I say, a skill set from that moment? Was it the boldness? What was it that you can give Beth today from that cluster, those critical, courageous decision that you had to make at that point? What is the skill set that you can transfer to Beth today that other people can feel and take with them?
What was the skill set that I used to make that decision?
At that point in time, maybe you didn't think it's a skill set, but maybe there's something that you feel that we can extract from that difficult decision, that courageous decision, that moment when you had to change your life.
Well, I would say trusting myself, you know.
That's a big one.
I
Yeah.
mean, I know that's not a skill set, but
Yeah, no, big
but
one. Yeah.
trusting myself and uh, making good decisions around who, I think I would say personnel decisions in a very, like, to put it in office talk, who's going to be in your life and everything that you can do to improve your trusting yourself, your intuition. I think those skills, and I would say over the course of my life, I have developed those skills with actual introspection and writing. I mean, knowing yourself. I mean, you can't trust yourself until you know yourself. So I would say knowing yourself is the first skill. And some of that is done with writing and understanding. Some of it is done with any kind of therapeutic work, whether it's with a therapist or in other modalities or you know, in any kind of recovery or with friends. Um, Also, I've been practicing yogi for a long, long time. That there's a coming to know yourself through that's Vidyaya, but I started and I've always meditated on and off. And then 6 years ago, I began a Vedic meditation practice, which is the practice that TM is based on, which somebody does give you a mantra and it's 20 minutes twice a day. Do I do it 20 minutes every single day, twice? No. But some days, yes, and some days once, and sometimes I miss a day, but I am consistently in the practice, and that practice is a practice of there's a stress relief. The science of it is a letting go of stress. And whether it's that practice or others, any practice that is going to help you hone your intuitive abilities. Very specifically in the Vedic system, they call it following your charm, which I love. I mean, it's a very like magic carpet way of thinking about it. But you can call following your intuition or knowing your heart or, that is the best skill set that will take you through life in every kind of situation, and everything follows that.
I really think so. Thank you. Thank you. And I think many of us stay where we are and are not able to shift to go to different because of just that, not
Yeah.
having the ability to even trust yourself.
Yeah.
Of course, you're telling us possible to know ourselves, but Of course, that's very
You
true.
have to know yourself or you can't trust yourself because who are you?
Yes, what is that you're going to trust? So
Yeah.
definitely, and that's the journey. That's the journey. Just like you are going through the journey, we need to go into that type of journey where we can be able to tap into the intuition to learn to know ourselves. To
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Oh, great. Thank you. So tell us, would you regard yourself as a fast decision maker or slow decision maker, procrastinator? Um, and whatever it is, has it worked?
Yeah. I can't decide how to answer this. I'd say both. There are some decisions I am definitely at ease with making a fast decision. And I have made a bunch of being a performer and being on stage is a billion fast decisions. You're just deciding things instantaneously all the time. And it is great practice. It is a practice in that kind of life. Um, there are decisions I have deliberated on for a long time. Oprah says, I'm not a big Oprah devotee, but one thing she has said that has stuck with me is when in doubt, don't.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is just an amazing way to look at it. But you also have to remember that generally there's never going to be 100% surety.
yeah,
Is there ever going to be, are you ever going to be without that tiny little piece, that grain of sand of I don't know-ness? No. So I would say be willing to live with a little bit of uncertainty, but go with where there is a strong feeling. So I've done both. I've done slow, I've done fast.
you do both, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what has influenced you? So where are you most of the time? Are you slower or faster? And in that way, I wanted to ask what has influenced your approach to decision making.
Um, First, sometimes I just know. I know my mind and my heart pretty well. And if not, if there have been, I mean, even I can think this year about two big decisions I made that I didn't know instantaneously about. There was a move and a decision to work with someone. Both of those took some deliberating. So when I think about those, I do, besides, consulting myself and my higher power. I do talk to people I trust. I mean, I have people around me, build a network of people you trust. And how you decide on who you trust is, over the course of time. Have they given you it's a little bit of a test. Do you admire how they live their life? Are they good decision makers? Do they know you? Do they understand you? Do you share morals and values? So I have a group of people like that. Do you trust them not to even gossip about you and talk about your decisions? So I talk to the people I trust, which is just a handful of people. Um, I try to decide both things. If I'm uncertain and I'm weighing things, I make a decision and I live with it without doing anything about it. And sometimes it sits right and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then I make the other decision and live with it. And I kind of go back and forth, kind of having made the decision but not acted on it. Um, those are my best. I never do a pro and con list. I mean, it just, those are so silly. It's ridiculous. I mean, sometimes there's one thing on the pro list, but it's the only thing that matters, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just crazy. So I will sometimes list stuff out, but more often than not, it's more of an essay than a multiple choice question for me. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. I think you've answered the next question, which was about how the process you follow in making important decisions, where there is any. But you've talked about the fact that you use, of course, you trust your intuition, but you also have friends who are just a handful that
Mhm.
you trust and can refer to them. And at times, of course, you use a little bit of having some pro and cons here, but not all the time. Is there anything else that you could be you engage in terms of the process for making important decisions or big decisions, like a move to change of location Oh, you talked about even working with a person. So this year, actually, did you require any process, or you just use those
I
methods
used
above?
all those. I mean, I used all those in both those decisions. And, at a certain point in both those decisions, I decided yes. And generally, I find for me, something doesn't stick around long enough to become a decision unless it's something that probably I do want to do. But some things are about leaving. I'm, the show has been this is my Uncabaret is so long running, and we've had residencies, it's been almost 30 years, and we've had a number of like 7 big residencies and a bunch of one-offs also, but long-term residencies. And there have been some cases where I've been, should we change our venue? And sometimes I've just dragged my heels until it just becomes clear because the venue has closed.
Oh,
But
God.
because change is sometimes there isn't a better option. Sometimes that where you are, and I don't just mean a venue, but where you are with anything, your job, if it's a job, or um, a location where you live, or uh, even say your weight, your hair, these things that we live with every day. You want to change, but when's the time? What's the thing? I have one friend who kept saying to me, I was just like, oh, we should move the show. And she kept saying, you'll know when it's time. It's like putting a dog down, you just like, you keep thinking about it, but one day it really is the day.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's like, don't pressure yourself to make a decision prematurely. The day will come. And there's a phrase, whether or not you believe in God, some people resist the word God, but insert your favorite phrase when I say God. Sometimes God does for you what you can't do for yourself. And when that happens, be grateful. When that
Yeah.
happens, notice it, and notice that you maybe could have done it for yourself a little sooner. Next time, you might go sooner.
Yeah. But somehow, definitely, God just helps you, helps you out there.
Sometimes God makes the decision for you. And sometimes, I find that sometimes taking the long view, the big view, pulling out to the long shot, if you were looking at it as a movie, I sometimes when it seems like it's not the right thing, or why did it happen this way, and have to make a decision about it, I do try to look at the bigger picture. I think that's a really great technique. You're asking me for techniques. Um,
Mm.
because things that have happened in the past, sometimes you can't see how they
Mm.
were quote unquote good for you or the right thing. And then somehow 10, 20 years later, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have happened. And as you mature, one of the great graces we get as we are privileged to grow up is knowing that that's the case in the past, knowing that things that didn't seem quote unquote good when they were happening have somehow evolved and given you an opportunity you never would have had otherwise, does give you a certain amount of grace to live through things that are uncomfortable or quote unquote bad, because you have experienced how things have unfolded in ways that you couldn't control. And I guess the decision to be live in that place where both you are as much an advocate for yourself and as much active and activated and a change agent for yourself, and also willing to go with the flow a little bit. I mean, this goes to what I was saying up top, type A free spirit, being both willing to roll with it and able to make things happen, and living those two things in balance, which is another way. I mean, the serenity prayer is that too, the courage to change the things you can, and the and the willingness to know when you can't, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it's got that balance. I mean, balance is such an important word for your
yeah,
listeners. To be a stellar woman is to somehow find balance.
yeah, definitely. That was a good one that you brought in the serenity prayer, the courage to do what you know that you can do. There are things that we can do, and we just don't have the courage to do
Yeah.
them, and to let go those that we know that we can't change, and yeah, and
Yeah.
to know the difference
Yeah.
between
The wisdom to know the
yeah,
difference, you know, but the
yeah,
courage to change what you can. I mean, if that, I mean, if no other sentence from this, it's not my sentence. It's like courage to change what you can, which sometimes is internal. Sometimes the
yes,
main decision you have to make, and I think this is
yes,
overlooked, is an internal decision, a
yeah,
decision to not see yourself as a victim, a decision to not, you know, be the person at work who you know, there's a lot of things that happen inside of us and they're invisible and they're not necessarily given the spotlight because they don't manifest immediately, but they will manifest.
indeed. Thank you. Thank you for that. So the next question we have here is to do with the fact that we can see you as a stellar woman who's shining, who has done so many things. Now, the key question people would wait for: has she failed at anything before? And definitely, people want to know, how do you get yourself up after going to the bottom or hitting the bottom? And have you failed at anything before?
Have I what?
Have you failed at anything before?
I fail every day, every single day. I've already failed in this interview 3 times. I can think of 3 things I've said that I wish I hadn't. Um, I mean, if you're not failing, you're not trying. You know, it's like fail a lot. I mean, the fear of failure is one of the key things that holds you back. The courage to fail. You know, I have failed miserably at so many things. But, you know, the good thing about being a comedian is if it's bad, it's funny. So, you know, eventually most of it is hilarious.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And it's to borrow a leaf from comedians, because they laugh at everything. And at times I just keep thinking, you better laugh at this situation as well, because then it eases you up instead of stressing yourself and really getting out of
Well,
line
you
on
know,
line.
the equation is pain plus time equals comedy. So, it's not usually funny immediately. The bigger the pain, the more time, tiny things become funny fast.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. But you talked about something that I thought our subscribers and listeners should actually take, is the courage to fail. I just hooked onto that and I thought, wow, that's something strong, something to take away,
Yeah.
something to help us to dare to be more courageous.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, go for it and go for it without attachment. You know, it's the attachment to result that really holds us back.
Mm,
You don't know what the
yeah.
results. There's so many things that are in my life. You know, I've done a project and it hasn't gone where I wanted it to go. And then 3 years later, something I learned in it is key to
Mm,
doing another thing. Um, you know, you just have, you know, the fear of failure is an attachment to result. And I mean, of course, we want good results. I mean, I'm not crazy. We all want to succeed. We want it to work out. And you do want to, you know, you want to have enough success that the failure isn't, you know, if you don't want to live a fail, you know, you don't want to be a failure. You have to be willing
no,
to fail. It's the difference between a noun and a verb. You don't want to be a failure, but you can have some failures, you know, or something like that. You
yes,
can fail
yes,
without being a failure. And the way to do that is to learn from your failures and to grow and create, you know, it's another way of saying mistakes. Also, you know, you have to be willing.
Definitely. Thank you. Having interviewed with so many men and women, I would like to know, do you think women make decisions differently from men?
I know, no, I can't answer that. I don't, the only thing I would say, I don't see any real gender differences except, I do have a sense, and I can't, I have a sense women, hear the clock of time a little more loudly, and that might give us both an advantage and a disadvantage. It does kind of keep you like moving because you hear that clock. There's the baby clock, and then there's the women in the world needing to be young clock. And, we hear the
Mhm.
clock for sure, really loudly. And we're trying to run from it. And in a way, it gives us an advantage, but it also can be deafening and it can keep us from hearing, that quiet. When the clock is really loud, it's hard to hear that small, quiet voice that we have to learn to value. So, in a way, you have to honor the clock without listening to it all the time, I think.
Honor the clock without listening to it all the time. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, you're a host and a producer of Uncombre, a comedy show. So, why and when did you make a decision to do this show?
Well, like I said earlier on, there was that moment where I was just frustrated with the comedy world, and I thought there's got to be a better way. Um, you know, suggest a different game, but I had no idea really what it was. I had come from New York, where being a performance artist in New York, and then a comedian, and I had very sort of arty idea of what comedy should be, I guess I should say. And there was a lot of showcasing going on. There was a thing called a tight 10 where comedians would just do the same thing over and over. There was a lot of, it was a very hard place to be a woman, specifically in terms of this. So one night I was at the but so I lived with the question. If I could say one thing about making decisions, is one technique I use is to try to love the question. I can't always do it, but I do believe in it, which is if I have a question like how to make comedy better, like I don't know, I can't decide about it because I don't even know what I think, but I can love the question of how would I do that? Like I want to do it a different way. What is that different way? I didn't have that idea of the question when I was in my 20s, but I do now. But I was living it in a certain way. So one night I was at the Comedy Store and I was following this guy named Andrew Dice Clay, who was famously a very women-hating comedian, and he was doing his usual misogynist stuff, and I was backstage watching, and he was killing, and even just the fact that you call it killing in comedy is so awful, and and I was hating him for doing that material. I was hating the audience for laughing at it. I was hating myself for hating everybody because I don't do well with hate, which actually is not a great thing for a comedian. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I did fail. And then if you want to know, and then I went on. I'm sure I didn't do well. I'm sure I had a bad set, fail, fail, fail. And then I still didn't know how to change anything, but I had that in me. And then shortly thereafter, I did a show at a place called the Women's Building, which was a small artist, it was a beautiful space where Judy Chicago first did the dinner party. And I was doing a show that I mean, they just were it wasn't quite as funny as they thought it was. Like I knew how funny. And anyway, in the meet and greet afterwards, I was like, "When was the last time you laughed?" I mean, it just wasn't quite as funny as you thought it was. And they were like, "Oh, we don't laugh. We're women and we're artists and we're lesbians and if we go to comedy clubs, they just make fun of us." And I said, I'm going to get back from tour. I was actually going to London, and I'm going to make you a show. It's going to be unhomophobic, unxenophobic, unmisogynist. It'll be the Uncabaret. And I don't know where it came from. It was a download. I had never thought of that word.
Wow.
I didn't really go to cabarets. I mean, I'd seen Cabaret the movie with my boyfriend and his boyfriend. I know it was a very immersive experience. And but I don't know where it came from, but I honored it. That and that right there is a thing about decision making. So that was super intuitive. And I didn't know where it came from. And I might have said, I don't know, this is crazy. Why would you do that? You hadn't, but there was an audience. I honored the fact that there was an audience. And part of the decision making for me is always connection. I long for connection. And and that was really just the beginning, but I did do that, and that was, we ran there, and then we moved, and there's a long story, but that is the very beginning of it. And I in some ways feel the decision was made for me. I mean, I asked the question and the answer was given, and I heard the answer.
And you acted upon it. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it has been running for over 27 years. Is that true?
Well, it's hard to say. I never know where to count from. I
The
never know where
beginning,
exactly. Should I count from that first show, or then should I count from, then we they lost their space, and then we moved to another space, and I consider like that the insemination, and then this other show, the sort of gestation, and then there was another show that was kind of the actual birth where it made noise and everybody, but really from that first thing it's been over 30 years, but I don't know, it's hard to say, but a long time.
A long time, quite a long time. How do you keep it fresh and relevant to the new audience over years?
I have tried to close it. I have tried to kill it, and has not stayed shut. That is one way I've kept it fresh. I've killed it and it's been reborn. I care about keeping it fresh, and that's one way is, I bring in, and it naturally stays fresh because people move on to other things. I have to bring in other people. I have to move venues because venues close. I've changed as a performer. My needs have changed. And because the show itself is really about being in the now, it is performers with new material, and I'm obsessed with sort of trying to name the now. And so even if nothing else changed, I mean, it has been experimental and open to new formats. We were on the internet before. I mean, when we started, there wasn't even cell phones. I mean, that's how long it's been. So we've really, we did an award-winning website when that was new. We've done, we did a series for Amazon before Amazon was really a thing. I mean, it's always it's always been a little bit ahead. We were on Zoom 2 weeks after 2 weeks into lockdown. We were already doing Zoom shows before anyone, but we're still doing them. I mean, that's another thing too. We have maintained those shows because it was an innovation that really stuck. We've tried some things that haven't, Anyway, we have spin-off shows. I divorced my producing partner. That kept it fresh. And it was hard. And so, we added music. There's a music director who came in when I restarted. I tried to end it, didn't, and then when we brought it back, I did it with a partner who was a musical director, and we added music. So, staying open. Honoring the past, creating the future.
Honoring the past and creating the future. I love that. So the next question was about you being the godmother of alternative comedy, whether you've always wanted to be a comedian. And I think you answered that a bit. Mm-hmm. Did you just grow into it, or you always wanted to be a comedian? Did you always want to make people laugh? I know is it so much about making fun or connection? Because I think you also mentioned connection.
Yeah, it's about connection for sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't always want to be a comedian. And in fact, I have a hard time even with that word now. I think there's a certain sort of feeling around that word. I love being on stage and doing what exactly looks like comedy. And I am a comedian, but I feel like it's got such a vibe around it, that word. But yeah. I remember being, in bed with my parents watching the late night talk shows and laughing and thinking this is the greatest thing. And I really love being funny. I mean, it is a joy. So.
Amazing. Thank you. Now, in regards, because you do too many things, in regards to companies. I know you've worked with Disney, Oxygen. I want to know, what's your most exciting project that you've worked on?
I think we've really talked about the most exciting projects, you know.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Um, and I know you were the first guest star for Will and Grace. What was that like?
Well, one of the great lessons of that, I mean, it was amazing to come into the show as the first guest star because they were really just, the energy was really, it was the first season and it was just starting to become itself. And, beginnings are so exciting, especially beginnings that are going well. So it was a real honor to be just in that environment. And it felt really, I felt very graced actually. And the main real takeaway from that is the director, James Burrows, who has, one of the big Hollywood directors of television. The way he directs, it's so funny because he's such a visual director and he really does do a lot of uh, sight stuff and there's a lot of physical comedy, but the way that he directs when he's working on a scene is he closes his eyes and he listens to the scene and he listens to the words and how they're being, he just listens. And I think that that's such a huge takeaway. Just listen more. Especially as women, I think we really can. I love to talk. Look, I'm a talker. It's my whole life. And I think because women who are trying to succeed and achieve are being, we naturally shift into a male dominated paradigm, and that has to do with talking and action and doing. And this goes back to what we were talking about, the divine feminine, to it feels almost too womanly to, and maybe we're not doing enough when we listen, and listening is the other half, and we can't cut that off because we want to succeed in this world as it is. Listen more, just listen more.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. You also have something else. You created the Infinite Creator, and this is just a hub for aspiring creatives. What inspired you to start this space and the classes that you offer? And how has that been for
Um, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, wasn't listening. I thought I did hear the question though. Was
you? Yeah.
that the full? Yeah. Um, I started teaching when Uncabaret was pretty young because there were people watching it wanting to learn how to do it. And it was such a particular kind of comedy that there wasn't anywhere else for them to learn it. And the requests were coming in and eventually we said yes. Um, Somewhat reluctantly, I don't know why. This is me being obstinate. I mean, there are pictures of me as a little girl at a blackboard teaching. I
Oh,
mean, like I was born to do it, but there is also that thing that, it's a second tier thing. Like if you're, those who can't do teach. So I think I was afraid of the teaching part of it because I didn't want to get shuffled off into that area, which was awful because we're all teaching and learning all the time, and I definitely have it in my DNA. So, as part of my fate, destiny. Anyway, I finally accepted that. So we started it as the Uncab Lab teaching stand up. Then it kind of grew into more different, as I developed my method and what it was I was teaching and how to be your authentic self and knowing yourself and how do you know what stories to tell. It kind of grew past what was called the Uncab Lab, and we renamed it The Comedian's Way, which was kind of a joke on the artist's way, and it was a picture of me falling through those mountains that she has on the cover of that book. And we taught that way for a while, and then when I split with my partner, I didn't want to carry over I just wanted a fresher start, and and then it was just the Beth Lapides workshop. Eventually, I was like, the title should say more, and I should have, and then I turned it into the Infinite Writer because I found there were more different kinds of writers coming to me than just comedy writers. And I was just listening to what that need was. And eventually it became, well, it's a whole system. I'm really coaching as much as teaching, and different kinds of people are coming to me, including therapists, authors who want to do speeches, and business people who are doing speeches, and people who want to work on their social media, and a lot of writers, and some, comedians. And I'm working with people on creating really not just the work, but the life that goes with the work, and that it is infinitely connected. And sometimes, like, learning to trust yourself or make a decision, which falls outside the exact realm of making the work, but is so important to the work. So eventually, fairly recently, I shifted to the Infinite Creator, and perhaps this is the title that I will, stick with for the rest of my days. But it is a community, and it's a community of creators who understand that there's a transformation that is always happening. And it is about the transformation into the person who can do the work, doing the work, and then growing into that person, and then doing it's, this is amazing sort of constantly evolving and growing and organically becomingness that we're allowed to do, and which I really believe in.
That's amazing. I like it. Infinite Creator. I just feel that that's the right one.
It's right for now. Who knows how things will change? And eventually, and I came to understand that part of it is turning the piles of paper that you have into projects, and then getting those projects out into the world. That I am both like 100% process oriented and 100% product oriented. That's 200%. I understand that. But, people tend to be one or the other, and I'm really both. So that connection also creates the infinite loop for me.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's all inclusive. Yeah, that's very good. Thank you. So you're a host, a comedian, a producer, an author, a coach, an actor, an actress, and I can see that there's just so many skill sets there. What skill sets or skill set do you see that transcends through all of this? Is there a particular skill set that you see that allows you to serve in all those capacities?
Well, beyond that skill set that we talked about at the beginning, I would say curiosity I don't know if it's a skill, but it is definitely part of my nature.
Yeah,
I think storytelling, being a storyteller, is a skill set, and that is definitely woven in all those things. And the skill of connecting, not just the desire to connect, but the ability to do it.
that's amazing. Thank you for that. So how do you keep going? What keeps you going? Let us
Desperation.
do that. Your world of yours. What keeps you going?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to see how it's going to turn out. I enjoy my work. I really enjoy my work. I enjoy life. I'm hungry to know. I have a hunger to experience more. I am ambitious by nature. I maybe have some maybe I have a high opinion of myself, and I want to be out there, and I want to be known, and I want to know and be known. I mean, that's, all the mystery. I feel I do love helping people, and I do feel that I've found more than one career that genuinely people are better for my having done the work. Maybe.
Yes. Thank you. I love them all. So if we had to go back in time and meet your 15-year-old self, what key message would you like to share with her?
That question always flummoxes me, because if I told her something, she wouldn't be the person she was, and then I wouldn't be me. And now we're into like the time travel conundrums. And my mind is so literal. I mean, I'm such a literal, and such a creative person, my mind is super literal. I'm like, that could never happen, Stella. That just can't be. I just don't know. Everything I know that she didn't, the things that she didn't know that she's learned. I mean, how would I be me if I told her anything? I guess if I would just whisper love to her. I would just quietly, in a very quiet voice that she might not even be knowing that she was hearing. I would maybe, um, maybe it wouldn't be so necessary to have beat myself up so hard during so much of it.
Mm, that's good. Thank you. So where do we see Beth in the next 5 to 10 years?
Um, I try not to. I try not to be too more, I love the books. I do follow the flow a little bit, so all this but more, I'm on this path and you don't exactly know. There's a TV show that I think is going to go, but maybe that will take my energy, and I certainly am working on the next book, and when will that come out? I'm not sure. Hopefully before 10 years. Hopefully, more books, more shows, more The Infinite Creator. Um, hear about more. Yeah,
Yeah,
hear about
all the
more.
best with that.
Hoping to see surprises. Don't
Yeah.
know, you know. Um,
Yeah, we look forward to all of that. We look forward to all of that. So do you have a life mantra?
Well, I do have a mantra, as I've told you before. Um, I guess my life mantra currently is, and it's so it's it I hate it and I love it. Um, the first time I think my mantra now is everything is unfolding in divine and perfect order. And I will tell you that the first time I heard somebody say it, I wanted to hit them. I mean, I am not a violent person, and it made me so mad. I was like, how can you say that? That is obviously not true. But the fact that I got so mad about it made me think, like, you might want to believe that, but not feel like you can. And, you know, eventually, so I started saying it as a joke when things were really bad. Like, obviously, they're not. Like, everything's so effed up, And I would say that. And I said it once on stage when things were really like, it was a night where there was just every logistical thing going wrong, and it got a huge laugh, and then I just thought it's hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious, but the fact that I said it and it got a laugh sort of made it true. And the fact that it made it true by saying it, what it does, so I started saying it more and I started believing it more, and the more I said it, the more I believed it. And then um and what it does for me is sometimes it takes me out of the moment of like, this is bad, and it puts me into that thing that I was talking about that I think is so important, of the big picture, like me not being able to see. It's another way of saying, like, you can't see God's whole plan and there's a bigger plan. And whether you think of it as like a computer game and you're in a computer game and there's, or whether you think like whatever it is, it takes you out of ego and out of controlling everything, and it does release some of that. And again, I'm going to go back to being a woman and feeling like, we have to work so hard because the world is not shaped to make things easy for us to flow in. And so it takes some of the struggle and turns it into challenges and opportunities when I say that. Anyway, it's I hesitate to say it. I might listen to this in 9 months and go, I can't believe I said that was my mantra. That's not my mantra at all. But my mantra, is like, sometimes I do also say less is being revealed. Less is always being revealed, because I just think the more you know, I mean, and I would say this about that too. It's like, You know, the more that you know, the more questions there are. Love the question. I try to just live in this place of like life is a mystery, love the questions, less is being revealed. Everything's unfolding in perfect and divine order, and the corollary, I might not be seeing everything that is. It's more like more than a mantra, like an attitude. I try to keep going back to that attitude.
Mhm. Mhm, mhm. Oh, it's both. It's lovely. Thank you. So we would like you to leave one challenge for women who are going to read this story, who are going to listen to it, view it, to help them become courageous in their decision-making process. What challenge would you like to leave them?
Hmm. Release the idea of what you should be doing. Really listen to your heart.
Release,
Release the
release
idea of
the
what you
idea
should be doing. Yeah.
and listen to your heart.
Mhm. And download my book. No.
Yeah, download the book. Download the book.
Listen to my
So
book and your heart.
yeah. Yes, and we'll leave the link behind for all the listeners, the viewers,
Good.
all the subscribers, be able to tap into all those lovely conversations on how
Yeah, I
decisions are
mean,
being.
really, Stella, I mean, the thing that we've been talking about this whole time, just to come back to that, which is the courage to release you, the courage to follow your heart, and the courage to act despite fear, to not expect that there isn't going to be fear, but to understand the difference between life-threatening fear and not, putting yourself in jeopardy, and just the kind of fear that is, natural when you're taking chances, and to know that really every wonderful thing has come from taking some kind of risk, to get comfortable with that risk taking and get smarter at it, and that is comes from learning to listen to your intuition and being willing to make mistakes, to fail. This is where success lives, and I wish your listeners all the greatest success, all the greatest success.
Oh, thank you so much, Brett. Thank you so much for your time. So, all our subscribers, I hope and I believe and I know that they are going to learn a lot from your story, from your knowledge, from all the experiences that you've been able to share. I've definitely learned a lot, and there's a lot for me to reflect upon. And so, all of you would like you to actually download the book. So you need to decide, and we'll leave you the link on how to actually get that book. So it has been amazing. It's still me, Stella Olivia Kikoyo, the editor-in-chief of the Stella Woman magazine. Thank you so much for being here. And with us is Beth Lapides, and Beth has been awesome. She has given us so much time, and it has just been a great time having you here, Beth. Thank you so much for your time.